Hello from Australia, Richard Miller, and you're on Never Not Here. And we do so many kinds of videos, you know. I mean, we go to teachers, we go to healers. I haven't got on the web yet, but I just did a whole bunch of movies with Aboriginals, and I've been staying in a kind of a Christian retreat center. Last night they had a dinner, which was their 16th anniversary, and I met Margarete Gorton. So welcome, Margaret.
Welcome, Richard. It was a pleasure meeting you last night. Quite a big surprise.
We got talking so much that we left the whole other 14 people out of the picture, right?
Oh,
we didn't even share ourselves with them.
More or less, we got so engrossed in our conversation. And I was up at not expecting it, of course, because I didn't know who you were. I never seen you. So you're a total unknown person to me. And I do like to talk to unknown people, because then I don't feel so, you do get a bit shy if people are very known. And you say, oh, be careful what you're saying, how you're saying it.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just wonderful, because though you were a stranger, but I didn't feel like being terribly, we felt instantly as we have known each other quite a while.
Yeah, at peace, sort of. Like that's what we find a lot in Never Not Here, that there's a core of humanity that already knows each other and is really comfortable.
Yes.
And I've always said it has to do with expectations, because if we don't expect anything out of the other person, like I don't want you to be intelligent, or I don't want you to be silly, or I don't want you to, more or less, I don't want you to obey or disobey.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really care.
No.
I'm just trying to find out who you are and what's important to you. And so.
But I always find also that coincidental meetings with a person, they are the actually hit, because you really are just talking out of the open, not knowing who the person actually is. Do you have to be careful what you're saying? Or do you have to sound clever what you're saying? Or don't make a fool of yourself if you talk to that person, because it's a well-known person. And I think this is just falling away from it. If you coincidentally meet and you say, oh, your name is Richard. Oh, that's nice. Nice name. How are you?
Right.
And I think
I do
wonderful.
Pretty well at not being important. So then you really have to watch out, I'm not the Dalai Lama or something, right?
No, but then, of course, when I came home and I said to my daughter, I say, I met someone at Paris, actually, who is doing a program on the website. And still, I'm very ignorant about these things. So we just picked up your thing and we looked in the website. I say, oh, wow, he's quite well known, and oh, how did I talk to him? Oh, I make myself to a fool. I hope not. But then I felt very relaxed, because I suddenly realized, because that was a way to meet you. I had no prejudice, I had no inhibitions, I had nothing. No, so totally open and unprepared, like you walk into the field and you see all the beauty. You don't expect it to be there, it just is there. And that's how it should be.
Another thing that I would have to comment on is that you had no pride, and you had no arrogance, and you had no presumption. And so then it was real easy to be with you.
That's right. And it was exactly no pride, but it also wasn't any expectation that I wanted to get something out of you or have advantages. Because we always sometimes feel, if we talk to someone very important, what is my advantage? What do I get out of that person? And I find that it's so calculating, and that just makes it cold. That whole
right. We live in a society where everybody's looking for the bottom line, right? Because in a way, we all feel like we're not complete the way we are, and so somebody can help us or somebody can hinder us. And then, of course, I know you're looking for a publisher, and so that's always great. But you're going to read us a poem, aren't you, to start out with?
Yes. Actually, I'll read you a poem, and it sounds a little bit sordid. But my whole writing, my fictional writing, because I have written, of course, a book, which is this one, and that is in German. so I'm bilingual, and I write just easily.
What that one's called? What is that called?
Das Erbe. That is the inheritance. This is a time when I went over to Germany for the reunification, because I inherited this estate, as you can see here, from my father. This was my father.
Here, let me show it.
And
okay, let's just see if we can see it without too much reflection here.
He was...
Right. So when's the last time you saw him?
1955.
1955.
That's when he died. I didn't see him, actually, because I left 1948. But he died in 1955. And he fought terribly hard against the communist regime of repossession of all the private property. Now, he was he was one of the largest construction firm in the city.
Was that in East Germany then?
East Germany.
Like
Russian.
East Berlin, or where was that?
That was in Halberstadt near Magdeburg. And he fought incredibly hard in his own way, not to be, well, he was confiscated until 1949, to be, you know, this communal idea, no one is a capitalist. And he says, I'm not a capitalist, I'm a worker. Whether I'm the boss, I'm still working. I'm not a capitalist. And actually, he took the whole confiscation act to the Russian court in Dresden. And he said, why do you disown me? What is the purpose of disowning me? I have 100 people to build up the railway. I have 100 people to build up to create new homes for you. What's the purpose of confiscating my business? And so the Russians actually gave it back to him. And then he made the clause. He said that if he dies, my mother should inherit his housing estate. There were 53 big houses, over 100 flats, and the daughter should inherit too. But the daughter, of course, left in 1948 for the sake of freedom, because I wanted freedom. I wanted freedom of speech. I wanted. After Hitler days, I had enough of being told to follow like a little robot the governance decisions. And, you know, I mean, people survived under any system. If you don't have to even necessarily be obedient, you just have to be indifferent. You just let them go and just...
Somehow you have to be invisible, right? You just have to kind
do your own thing.
Stay in the background and not upset anyone. And
exactly, that's what you learn to do. But anyway, it cuts the story short.
In a way, you withdraw from life. In a way, because you're not outgoing. It's risky, right? To be even positive or negative. And so then that's quite a lesson that you have to unlearn in a way.
I had to, but anyway, I decided with my parents when I turned 18, but there's also a private story behind it. We're not going into that. But I decided with the consent of my parents, I was the only daughter, that my life would not, even with my father, not be safe in East Germany. I wouldn't get a university place, for one thing. I wouldn't get any help in educating myself, or my parents had money to educate me, because it was only for the Communist Party to put their own people in universities. So there was no chance for me. And I already had the potentials of being a writer, that they said, no way, the material I was writing would never be published in East Germany. So to make anything out of myself, well, yes, I know we can't help you when you escape. You will be as poor as the church mouse. But with God's blessings, you might have the strength to do it. And, well, anyway, cut the story short, I escaped on my 18th birthday over the Russian border in the night. And I made it safely to the West. And then I carried on struggling for my existence from then on. And I did inherit it, well, then I came to England and I married in England, and I did inherit this property. This 1966, my mother died, and I then there was no more confiscation, and I inherited it, but it was managed by, I had a manager. I couldn't really say anything about the buildings. So when unification came, 1990, my first thing was, get over there. Have a look at the houses, and they were in a very poor state. And when I just looked at them, I said, this is the estate I inherited.
Let me just put it up here and we can see it here. Maybe, where's this thing here? Oops. Yeah, that shows good.
So that's a corner block.
Right.
And I decided, it was in a terrible state, as possibly in close-up you would see it. And I decided that, I know I was 60, and I always was a little bit, go for something big. Why don't you just renovate it yourself? Why don't you just become the boss? You are the boss. You have been the boss since 1966 without a say. Hooray, I'm the boss and finally can say something. This is the inheritance of my parents. And I finally have got the freedom to say, I want it this way. I want to have new windows. I want to have, keep all my tenants. I had a great tenant meeting and they all got scared and said, you're going to sell, don't you? And if we sell, you're selling it to big firms, and we're losing our flats, and we are homeless. I say, no. I had a tenant who lived there since 1924-7, when the houses were built. She was over 80 years old, and I said, Frau Schmidt, I let you die in your flat. Well, I didn't know what I was doing, but never mind. I just said, no, I'm not. My parents, you know all my parents. You knew me when I was little. I cannot say I sell you to a Western investing company and they are just saying out. We renovate, we are making, because they were big flats, we're making them smaller and we make money. So I said, no, I shall renovate.
So maybe that has something to do with, like your fortune was that you had to escape, you had to leave your family and leave any kind of sustenance from your family, because you said, okay, in order to be in the university, I'm going to have to make it in some other country. I'm not going to make it here. And so then something about that terrible situation made you so strong that you could grow from just a seed that you were, and that you could take responsibility for your life and become an author and a writer and a poet.
Yep.
And so then that power also allowed you to say, hey, look, I'm going to renovate this place.
That's right.
Right.
get going, and have a bank loan, millions. My children say, Mom, I say, it's all right. I haven't got a penny. So I have to go to the bank. And the bank said, yes, Mrs. Gorton. The value of the properties I won't mention here. But of course you can have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. I said, hold on. I tried carefully. But the main thing was I did renovate. They looked gorgeous. I got a film of it too. They looked fantastic. The tenants were grateful. The tenants suffered all the dust and the dirt, and we went through the renovations, because you must remember that for all the years the Russians were in the zone, there was nothing for the private properties to be renovated. Maintained, nothing. They looked derelict. They looked like slum. And I thought, no. And in my flats were highly educated and intelligent people, and there were poor people, and there were such a mixture of wonderful people. And we all had a garden fete where we all celebrated together. And then the final is when my little Frau Schmidt, she lived through, and I kept my promise. She died in her sitting room, and I put a rose on her, and I said, there you are. I told you, you're allowed to die in your own home.
Fantastic.
And I found then I got broke, but never mind.
Sure, never mind about that.
Never.
You've gone through so many things in your life, because sometimes I think that I've done so many things, or a lot of things, because like I'm never stuck with any one thing, and I moved around. And at first I moved in the United States, but 8 years here, 10 years there, something there, and then I got to Italy for 10 years, so I do have kind of like a hybridization, or I have that kind of a European tinge, and then so I feel comfortable in a lot of places, but you way, way more than me. And so then last night when we were talking, one of the things that struck me so much is you said, my life, it's kind of like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm paraphrasing, like, my life is kind of like I'm on the Wheel of Fortune. And I say, okay, any one of these will be fine, but please don't send me over there. Round it goes, oops, it stopped over there. And you say, uh-oh,
yeah.
I guess right. I have to go in. So then you go in over there, wherever that is, and you say, and it's like scratching all my clothes off as I get through this trail, and like who I thought of as myself is no longer needed, who I thought of as so important. Yeah. Turns out to be just extra weight I was carrying. And that's how I interpreted it. And it just seems like you're such a free woman.
Free. Well, it is something, the theme is, like I will read you the poem in a minute. As a writer, you should be concentrating definitely on your own home, your theme, your genre. I mean, it is very well to be a fiction writer. I know that some publishers said, you are good at writing. Now, why don't you write for the public? I say, wait a minute, what public? Romantic novel? No, yeah, I can write I can please them, but I say, the thing is, it has to be me. If I want to write a story, and I tell a story to the children, I tell a story to adults, I'm a storyteller. I'm not really a commercial writer. I mean, I have gone through journalism courses, and I have gone through literary classes, and I have done I have been long enough in Cambridge to be with all the people, and I have done a literary 2 years course there, college course, and studied all the old writers and felt very warm and happy with them. But I always still felt, why don't you, and the people said, why don't you publish? I say, I don't publish. I'm going to be published if someone is interested. But I myself, I'm writing. And that is for me publishing, because I'm already coming out in year open with it. But basically, you have to recognize what you really are. So otherwise you say, am I a journalist? Now I have done journalist writing, interviews, and a few interviews. I wasn't happy. But basically there is a theme, and the theme always was the search for, not the search, but when I had an inspiration, it was, where did it come from? Because there is secondary nature that I cannot say, if I have a subject, like an essay writing, when I did my exams, I had to write essays for the, you get this theme, this is what you have to write today, then you're working, you're doing a kind of research. That's different, because then you're concentrating on that research, and whether you're clever or not, it doesn't matter. But when I'm writing poetry, stories, or books, then I'm totally and utterly involved with what comes towards me on thoughts. And the questions, what's this? And then comes the theme. Now, I tell you the theme, because now being over 80, and it has not been death all the time, obviously not, but very much on that line, because I have seen too much death. in a war. Even when I left East Germany, when I went over the border, I went in a small group of 2 women, 2 men, and myself. And the 2 women, they were caught, and I heard them screaming. They were killed by the Russians, and I just could run past them. And it was this senselessness of death by the hand of man. If you die because of nature, then it's a call-up, then you die. But to die by the hand of man is stealing away your life. It's a theft. And I always wondered how we're not going to judge that. We are judging every criminal who kills. But how is the soul itself coping with that theft? So the question is, do we believe in afterlife or don't we? Do we think there is a justice that someone receives us to say, look, I'm sorry, they stole your life, but we repay it, we give it back to you? We don't know the answer. I only know that the killing which is going on everywhere and still is going on, if man is not conscious enough what they're actually doing. I mean, we knew right from the beginning, you shall not kill.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know about the justice in the future and all that stuff, because in a way those are all good ideas, and I mean, they're thoughts that make us feel like, well, somehow justice serves, right? So justice, it's like a second grade ease, because there really is no ease to these injustices. But somehow if we feel like, well, in the end, something right happens and they pay, it really doesn't do anything, right? I mean, if you kill a criminal, a murderer, it doesn't bring back any of his victims.
No.
Really doesn't do anything. And so then you're just saying, well, okay, he won't do another one because he's gone, right? But I think there's something more imminent, more just right here and now, and the perpetrator, we all can see that the victim is victimized, right, and suffers. But the perpetrator, how does the perpetrator suffer? Something about the perpetrator he has to live in a life of numbness. Now, maybe all of us are living in a life of numbness anyhow, and so it doesn't seem much different. But the ones of us that are, well, just like, let's go to the Christian teachings, the ones of us that are pure in heart have a chance to live without numbness and to live back to the scriptures is kingdom of heaven. The ones of us without numbness and that are not perpetrators, at least we have the chance to know God and to know ourselves. And I don't think that the killer has that chance, because he can't bear to drop his numbness.
Yeah, you won't. Yeah.
So then that's the debt that he's paying right now, and that he pays. This life is never going to be a life of richness, right? And I don't know, I guess it doesn't seem like such a big cost, because so many people, the good and the bad alike, don't live a life of richness, because we're just kind of hypnotized. And that numbness is sort of collective, right?
Yes. But when you talk to the individuals, so when I concentrate that, because as I say, there is no answer to it, because you can't even bring an answer. We always say, oh, well, the people say that's life, and let's get over it. If you hear to the victims of the concentration camp, I mean, even they had to start a new life again. And it is because of my youth, having seen so much death, that you come to terms with death, whether it's being a violent death, or death through politicians, or what we call ideology, or whatever belief makes you kill. It has always been with us, and so gradually you outgrow the intenseness of saying, well, why is death there? And you come to the other side and you say, well, you don't accept it as for granted, nor should you accept life for granted. As both things, we know, as you say, from the time we die. I said, for instance, I said here for age, that that as you grow older, and this is what publishers always stop saying, you know, if you are talking too much about death, it becomes morbid. People don't want to hear it. And yet if you come to the individual and you go to the funerals, they do. They want to have a kind of a relationship. And that
What do you mean, a relationship with death?
Yes, in a kind of a way. What do they ask themselves? A question like, say, after I die. Now, after I die was a theme given when I went to the creative writing class. And Jenny, unfortunately, has died of cancer. And it was for me to make a poem after I didn't know then that she actually had cancer and was doomed to die very young. But I was inspired by the homework she gave me to say, after I die. Now, what do you write after I die? What do you think about that? I mean, you already have dealt with death, but after I die. So my poem after that, may I read?
Please.
After I die, will my spirit be like a bird, powered by air and wings, and its ultimate goal to make it across the great ocean of time? Or be like a fish moving in with its silent shoal through the darkness of the deep sea of great and everlasting mystery? Where will I be after death greets me tomorrow? Will I rise from my mortal grave in sorrow and discover myself in the mirror of truth as the person I endeavored to choose to be during my fateful walk through life's natural territory? After I die, will I be transformed into a new being and find my home under a strange, luminous blue sky? Will I feel the profound stillness of a starlit night and stroll leisurely through the landscape of my fantasy and hear the last sounds of mankind's symphony softly trailing after me? After I die, oh, may the richness of my thoughts be my guide through the labyrinths of the great unknown. May the voices of spirits I once shied rise louder in the canyons of lifeless space. Yeah. I haven't quite finished. And fill my soul with eternal joy and grace. May I receive the blessings of an enlightened mind and make my peace with the world I leave behind.
This poem is called After I Die by Margarete Gorton. After I die, will my spirit be like a bird in line, powered by air and wings, and its ultimate goal to make it across the great ocean of time? Or be like a fish, moving with its silent shoal through the darkness of the deep sea of great and everlasting mystery? Where will I be after death greets me tomorrow? Will I rise from my mortal grave in sorrow and discover myself in the mirror of truth as a person I endeavored to choose to be during my fateful walk through life's natural territory? After I die, will I be transformed into a new being and find my home under a strange, luminous blue sky? Will I feel the profound stillness of a starlit night and stroll leisurely through the landscape of my fantasy and hear the last sounds of mankind's symphony softly trailing after me? After I die, oh, may the richness of my thoughts be my guide through the labyrinth of the great unknown. May the voices of spirits I once shied rise louder in the canyons of lifeless space and fill my soul with eternal joy and grace. May I receive the blessings of an enlightened mind and make my peace with the world I leave behind. Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome.
You know, a couple things I'd like to say.
And as it is always my habit, I usually make 1 or 2 or 3 poems on the same theme. So it's not just always one poem. When I write one poem, another poem comes tumbling along and says, I want to be heard too. You want to hear it?
Please.
After I die. After I die, what will there be beyond our own amazing sky, beyond the starlit galaxy, beyond all things my mortal eye cannot see through in clarity before the end of tomorrow? And tell me what is basically true behind the concrete wall of sorrow, behind life's mirror glaring bright, reflecting day and night in unblemished form of naked reality, our world of controversial supremacy. After I die, what will I find behind the rainbow of our sky? An ultimate pious mind of peace, of greatness, of perfection, revealing unto me the muse of my resurrection? O God, may the awakening to the truth I must face at my day's lonely end be gentle, be kind, be rich and uncouth, and unconditionally then lend me a new lease of spiritual life to be, that can lead me onwards to your eternity.
Wow.
That's it.
You know, you said some really interesting things of how people react to death, and that you saw so many things about death, and so much senseless death, and so much death that was just arbitrary and somehow made by man's agreement to man, that okay, these people are less than people, or somehow they have to stay in their boundaries, and if they cross we can shoot them, and some silly agreements. And then you said that a lot of people say, let's just get over it, right, and go on with life, because life is still happening. And so in one sense we have to get over it, but what does that get over it mean? I mean, does it mean just sweep it under the rug and try to forget it, or does it mean somehow, I mean, there's some kind of a richness there that if you know death, you know life, something about life, right? And so then that's a richness that you're writing about.
That's a richness. That is coming not to fear death, but to know that you also have to prepare yourself, not to fear it. I have heard some people, when I worked as an auxiliary in hospitals, you know, I mean, petrified of dying. And I thought, why do you block yourself? You know that it doesn't matter when we die. One day we will die. So why be afraid? You know, you have to go towards it, because from birth, you start going towards it. After birth follows death. What's in the middle is your path, is your walk towards it, not away from it. You can't expect to be born again and lie in a cradle, because you have outgrown it. That is nature. That is biological.
Sometime in my life, I just realized that I'm always feeling the same. And then I saw my mother was older than me, and she was fearing death. And I was thinking, like, all these different decades, I haven't really felt that different. Will I ever be ready for death? And then I got it that I will never be ready for death. So therefore, I'm ready now. Or at least it's going to feel the same as now.
Yes.
So then that just puts me ready.
Yeah.
And so then I said I didn't fear death. Now, I probably feared hurting or pain. or if death was going to be painful or limited, I probably had a fear of that. Or I've never really got close enough to it to really find out if those thoughts are honest. But anyhow, that came to me.
So this is it. It's a theme is because of having seen so much death from childhood onwards. I didn't question it anymore, but that has to do something also with age, obviously. I wasn't talking about so much as death when I was young. But I tell you, I found one of the, again, it's classwork from Jenny, which I did here in Healdsville, creative writing class. And again, we were told to write a poem with action. And I went home and I thought myself, action, 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 action. There's so many things to write. Now, I usually do not write poetry on order. It has to be inspiration. But it suddenly, I don't know how it came, and I suddenly said, freedom. Now, in freedom, headline, freedom. And this is what came out of it. Yeah?
Please.
Stop, commands a Russian voice. Shots. Silence. Only her heart shouts, run, woman, run. Don't look back, or you will be dead. 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 For heaven's sake, run, woman, run. You aren't over the border yet. And she runs like a fox chased by hounds, with breath hissing loud in her young chest. She jumps over ghostly stumps, between whispering trees, under the black canopy of a divided forest in Germany. She falls, she gets caught in prickly shrubs, lies still. Her heart loses a beat, finds it again. It was not the boot of a Russian soldier she had heard, was not the mouth of a gun pinning her down. It was a branch spiky black, a branch entwined with her leg. The night is cold, is wet, is windy. The night is hungry for an interlude of peace, and listens to a mournful melody rising from a camping site where Russian soldiers forget their drill, to aim, to torture, to kill. She loses sense of time, of place, wants to weep, to sleep, to lie still. Russian tongues prowling, danger, death on her heels, and the voices of night howling. Run, woman, run, don't look back, you aren't there yet, where dawn will greet you with the first rays of sun and set you free. And she runs, not feeling the blisters on her feet, not having a moment to spare for gripping feelings of icy fear. Eyes travel high on waves of tears to a new morning sky, spanning over an old barn in no man's land. Stop, shouts a British voice, and she stops in midst dew silvery mist, transfixed by the sight of a silent gun that catches the spark of the rising sun. She smiles, she quietly weeps, and completes her path to freedom. Hallelujah.
Wow. It's, to hear a poem like that maybe is not so powerful, but when I know it's the truth, it just is really shattering.
That was me.
Of course.
And the amazing thing is, of course, that I went all through this, but I never suffered nightmares because I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. Life is a story. And if we can write Harry Potter with the most gruesome scenes, but we also live through sometimes of our stories, not just fantasy. And the real stories in real life, which aren't fantasy, and yet in the end, when you look back, there was always this, not the acting your story, because the fact is that you run for your life. You wanted to live. You didn't want to die. You had a purpose of going through that torment. And once you know your purpose, why you suffer and why you are tormented, and you know that there's always a gate open where you suddenly can go through freedom. And every time you come out of this torment, you go back and you come through and you say, freedom. I'm free. And I leave it behind. So therefore, you can't regret it.
Explain more of that, how you do it, okay, first you said that you never had nightmares because you're a writer. Then you said you go through this path and this torment, and then somehow you're free. You go to freedom, and then you can't regret it. Now, say more about that, because I think so many people witness tragedy and they're in what they call post-traumatic stress for decades. And how can you free yourself?
How can you free yourself? I think there are many, also in my poems, how you free yourself. It's a good question. How do you...
I mean, your life sounds like a miracle, because really, I don't know. Nobody's lived, not many people left that have lived through Hitler's Germany and occupation afterwards. And
well, I ended my book, which I hope to publish, because in that you are getting a lot of. I travel in platform. I travel as it is actually to asking our purpose of living, to get something clear about it. Why are we here? Why aren't we just like the animals? They have got their inbuilt program of how to live and how to survive. It's all there. So it's all done for them. But we have got an intelligence. We have got a secondary nature of a kind of a spirit. Why has this secondary nature attached itself to us and made us animal body become thinkers? They're thinking in their own ways. I mean, we have got enough animals around us to study their wonderful ways. They got a mind on their own. They have got the limitation of their own world to think. And ours is just grown a little bit bigger, and it has opened a roof. And when we look up, they have got their roof, and they look up and they feel protected. But something has opened slightly our roof, and we look up and we see maybe just a glare of light, but we know that something is pouring in. And I always go into, which I always questioned, is the thought. I never thought that I could produce a thought. I always had the feeling that there is a thought coming towards me. And how do I deal with this thought? Now, sometimes I say, to avoid any madness or insanity or getting totally confused as like you get, let you say, oh, you're so disturbed, you're so confused. And I thought, no, that is just, I have to eliminate something here, and that is my inner emotional, human emotional side, in contrast to just the pure thought, which is an inspiration. It comes to you. It's what the scientists say is, what I said as an author note from my platform, is there was a time in my early adult life when I declared with passion that science is the enemy of God, and it should be strictly kept under control by our universities of higher intelligence, as well as by politicians. Then, as I grew older, passion waned and made room for a more sobering hypothetical suggestion that, if God would not have wanted people to develop tendencies for scientific studies, he could have long ago put an end to it, and to all of the laborious researches in process. But he didn't. Why? My attention was drawn by chance to a report from a neurological research team which claims that we can dispense with our faith in God for good. They have come to the scientific conclusion that our brain exists on its own without any outside influence from a supernatural intelligence force. It can do the work of contemplating the meaning of a God and infinity right on spot, here on earth and nowhere else. That means that death is absolute. There is nothing to come after it, no transcendence to higher dimensions, no new awakening to the great mysteries of supernatural powers, and no ultimate reunion with the creator of this cosmos and his life force. No God, no infinity, no afterlife. Live by the motto, take all you can get out of the system of plenty, and never mind the tomorrow. Well, that's easier said than done. What about the people who suffered nothing but misery in an unjust, mean social class system? What did they get out of life? Never having had a chance to savor the comfort of a secure, good income needed for boosting the quality of their existence in a troublesome world? From misery straight onto an irreversible end of physical life? Death absolute? Well, yes, a corpse is a corpse, subjected in decay, or burnt to ashes, and that goes by the law of nature. But what about the soul, which is aligned from birth to death with a living cell? Does it become instantly non-existent too? According to science, yes, it's all in our brain. Soul, sentiments. And then I say a bit more. The point I'm trying to make is that there is nothing wrong with keeping in step with neurological scientific research if it helps us to gain a better understanding of ourselves and life in general. But one should not become too complacent and leave it all to science to probe into the myth of one's own subconscious and mute there an inner voice which is the gateway to spiritual dimensions of unknown origin. What inner voice? There is no scientific proof of a secondary nature affiliated to our subconscious. It is part of our brain where anatomy, evolution, and genetics collide and set off mirror neurons that are capable of firing off virtual reality experience, which in turn can fool us into believing in phantoms of supernatural kind, like ghosts and other forms and depths of apparitions. But surely that's not the end of the story, is it? And then I skip again. I remain fully aware in a rational sense of my unique position as a member of an expanding world of myth. Today's facts are tomorrow's fictions, are yesterday's dreams. Myth is alive. It is there for all to see, to feel, to touch. It motivates inspirations for creative writing. It motivates people with fresh ideas to solve their personal problem, with issues that bothers them, perhaps like the scientific assumption that death is the end of the road of all things. So what is life all about? Look into the troubled eyes of starving children, of refugees from the atrocity of wars, of homeless people, of sick people, of underprivileged people, and tell them what? The latest report from neurological research into the making of mankind? Tell them that their miserable existence is the work of hundreds of billions of wisps in their skull, known as neurons? Tell them that it is all the fault of these neurons which got them there, where they are now, which is in a miserable mess. What about the more fortunate ones in our society? Did their neurons work full blast for their material and physical benefit round the clock by the grace of God? No. God has nothing to do with any of it. What scientism concerns, there is no God. And to most of the people of the 21st century, that's quite convincing enough. So let's drop the subject. Easier said than done. Regardless how conditioned one is to fit into the category of stout atheist, in the back of our mind lingers on an ancient spiritual awareness of a supernatural being with a big question mark right across it. And the fact is that our brain is attracted to any question mark like a moth to light. Which brings me to the conclusion that, whether we like it or not, we are involuntarily drawn into the one and only universal coordinated race to the truth, regardlessly how we feel about it or what we think about it or don't think at all. We are in it. And behind it all is more than what scientism can ever bargain with. It is a purely and utterly spiritual phenomenon that refuses to be trapped under a microscope in any of the advanced research institutes of neurology across the world, and become classified as cell, programmed and functional like a robot for our sole use. At this point, I call on Megan, whose imaginary journey along the borderline of the here and the there might even outweigh uncunningly scientific assumption that there is no God, nor any other extraterrestrial force of higher intelligence around us. I shall relax and reflect upon her saying, nothing is impossible. And that's all the book is about.
Wow. That, I don't know, it makes me want to go out and buy it, but I think it's not published yet, right?
No, it's not published.
That's exciting reading. I don't know. That's kind of like the stuff that we make this show out of.
Because, you see, this is what I actually meant to say. When Megan has done her journey and she leaves her, this is what even my daughter liked, and she gives the epilogue. So you have the whole story. She's doing the platform, she's doing the journey, and she's meeting old friends from the past. And it just highlights episodes out of their life. Most of them actually committed suicide. And they say what they felt after, when death came to them, the realization that they have taken their own life. A couple of them did. And one or two by violence, they died. And some or two gone with bad conscience and good conscience. But anyway, they're quite interesting little episodes out of people's life before and after death, before their death. And she comes to saying, because I realize I don't let it become morbid. There are lots of little things you can smile about, and you can think, oh, it's a nice little journey here. We're having fun together. And so it's not frivolous. We are not treating death frivolous, but it has nothing to do with death anymore. It's just our journey from here to there. And, where do we go from there to there? Because if you are a traveler, you always had this curiosity when you come to the station where you say, this is a destination, I'm getting off there. What do I see? What do I find? This is a discovery which our people have done, how they discovered America, how they discovered Australia. The pioneers must have had this thrilling, exciting feeling getting off a boat and say, wow, there's land. What is it like? And it is what drives us, is to find and explore this newness. And I just go a little bit further. I said, yeah, well, we have we explored everything on the planet here, on planet Earth. And we are going up now and to find life in Mars and Jupiter and Moon and wherever. But what are you going to do if you hit on life? Something progressed or something, but it is the unexpected, the impossible. And don't make a fantasy out of it and already create it for you, because you don't even know what you're creating because you haven't even found it yet. So you can only create out of an image which you already have got, and you copy it. And then, yes, you can sort of fold it up and make it look a bit different, but it isn't entirely new because it hasn't been there yet. So before you describe what you found in Australia, you had to come to Australia to describe it. You couldn't say, I'm going to that land and it really looked like that. You couldn't do that. So the experience have to be there first. And then it's not new anymore. Once you experience it, it's basic, it's reality, it's old. And this is something, like I said in the epilogue. Do we want to know about death? Do we want to hold the knife of pain in our trembling hand, knowing that this is the end, so absolute, irreversible end of living? Death, feared, a power that shocks, cripples our mind, that does not disclose the final second it strikes and stops the beat of our heart for good. No, we don't want to know about death. We want to talk about living, about our love for life. We want to count only days, weeks, months, oh, the many exciting years to come after birth. But my dear, you do talk about death, involuntarily. You are part of the dying. You weep, you grieve, you say goodbye with a knife in your hand that cuts wounds in your heart. You look death straight in its mask, cold face, every day. And you can't wish it away. Not for the rest of your life. You can't shut your eyes and pretend it isn't there, all around you and in the air you breathe. Oh, what fool would you be to deny that for each one of us the day will come to die? No, we shall not talk about our own death. We shall not look ahead to the hour it strikes. We will live for every sunrise, for our dreams, our joys, our positive being in the world of today. But we will become silent and stay in thoughts with everyone for whom the sun is not rising in the morn. We will hold out our hand, warm and gentle, to welcome their spirit, reborn in death, to be back in our midst of living.
There's so many things you said that have struck me pretty strongly, and I want to ask about it and go deeper into it.
So that's what the book is.
Wow.
I take you from that bit to that last poem.
Right.
And by the time you come to that poem, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, Megan tells you that.
Mm-hmm.
I chose Megan, partly me, but I needed, because I don't like too much talking about myself, and I feel more comfortable to have actually this second thing there.
Have a character. Huh?
Yes, have a character sitting next to me, and I say, well, do your job for me. You know, you tell the story. And however it comes over, sometimes because I can tell off Megan easier than I might tell off myself. You know, I mean...
Megan might be able to have a secondary voice, or she might say what she wants to say, and then you have a more difficulty to veer away from what your convictions are, maybe.
Yeah, and Megan has more freedom.
Right.
You see, I'm more worried about my phraseology. I'm more worried about my English. And I can say, oh, Megan, you're just a stupid old 80-year-old woman, just blubber on. Well, I'll take it, I'll write it down as you say it, and I don't worry about it, you know.
Right, perfect.
If I write it, I say, your English, oh, it's atrocious. Why isn't it perfect? So Megan was allowed to be imperfect.
So we make a lot of stories about a soul and a place to go and reunion with God and so on, right? It goes on in a way endless, and somehow it's useful for different things because somehow it makes us feel like, well, it's all worthwhile, or it's part of the process, or those that feel like somehow our life is just too controlled by others that are against us. It makes some sense out of it, really. And it really doesn't make any sense out of it because really we don't know if it's ever true or if we're just saying that in agreement with people that are in the same situation as us. It doesn't really make sense out of it, but somehow we're able to rest in that, and the resting is of some value, right? But in the meantime, what is the meaning of people's lives that were always cut short, or that were always made to suffer on purpose? You know, I mean, one meaning of it could be is just me, you know, for me, because I'm still alive, they're gone, right? And the meaning to me could mean that I would endeavor to make that not happen anymore. Somewhere in this world, maybe I can just speak against a domination. Mm-hmm. And that could, you know, their life was meaningful for me and actually gave me a purpose to say, no, let's eliminate that. That's, you know, that hurts for me too.
That's right. Yes.
And so then that's a more you know, more eminent meaning. That it's a meaning that is still alive and through me instead of them. You know, if we want to say that what's the life for them, okay, they're gone, so then we could say, well, they're happy in heaven or something like that, or the meek shall inherit the earth, or all these kind of ideas that say there's some afterlife in some other place, and there's a rebirth, and there's all these other things. I don't know, but if there is all those other things, they're happening anyhow, whether we say it or not, right? So then it's not that important to say it if we don't feel like that we need to somehow give ourselves a break.
Megan's journal of an odyssey along the borderline of the here and the there. Megan, someone called, someone who wasn't really there, and yet I knew the experience of sensing an atmosphere, then seeing a shadow, then focusing on the contour of a figure veiled in the soft light gray of rising dew, then recognition, a white smile. 6. Oh, here we are. Hi, I said, not feeling stupid, just normal. It was Shatra who parted from our world before we both could meet again, and whose coffin I followed, sobbing, hurt, confused. We had planned such a wonderful reunion after years of separation. I had been abroad, had come home, and just then she had left us for good, suddenly. Shock, disbelief. She came to me in spirit, comforting me in my grief. I could see her, hear her, and feel her looking over my shoulder one day I was composing a requested obituary for her memorial service. Nothing flowed from my pen which makes the slightest sense. Listen, dear, she said, you don't get things right. You want to write something about our friendship. That's fine. But don't make it sound as if it is finished now. and all you are left with are memories of me, and what and who I have been. That makes me feel dead, really dead. And that is awful, because I'm not. Do you believe that God has further use for the souls who finished their days on earth? My dear friend, the journey to the highest is timeless. May I suggest that instead of getting an obituary together in my honor, you take a trip with me in your mundane self. I promise you a few surprises. Trip to where? She left my question hanging in the air for several years. It floated back to me, still unanswered, on a moonlit night far away from my long-term home in England, and lingered on through our dull morning hours. Dusk conjured up a strange display of light, shades and color. I looked out of the window, across to an old oak tree, standing lonely in the courtyard. The tree had been imported to Australia, and was a stranger to the native eucalypt, just as I was a stranger to the dreamland of the Aboriginals. This alienation was of a definite disadvantage in my case, because, if otherwise, I could have reckoned with their natural approval of my belief in ethereal beings. However, whether they would have agreed with my liberal manner in which I communicated with them is another matter. I kept on looking at the European tree, now leafless and sullen in its winterly bareness and crazily laced canopy of twisted branches. I noticed, amazed, an engraving in its old, gnarled, wet and deep brown bark. Nature was the creator of this incredible piece of sculpture, a mother and child hugging each other, sweet and simple, in a gesture of deep and silent love, untroubled trust and profound compassion. Suddenly I got it. It held a message for me. I folded my hands in a gesture of gratitude to my Maker and read, "Nothing, absolutely nothing, is impossible to achieve and endure when in the embrace of love and hope." I suppose at my ripe old age I can be trusted to cope with the impossible in a rational manner. Well, anyway, I'll put it to the test. And do what? Take a trip along the borderline of the fourth dimension in the company of ghosts, called out Chatra, increasing the electrifying atmosphere of her presence rapidly. That sounds awesome, creepy. I gave it a thought. Megan, just try to give us departed souls a realistic place in your life. We are real as one ever can be in our own ways. Go and take this trip and meet us on mutual grounds. Take us for as real as we take you. Nothing is impossible. Believe me. I finally had her answer to my question and felt truly intrigued. And I believed her. Nothing is impossible, not even an unusual journey beyond the rainbow of time. And that's my book.
Boy, I think you've really whetted our appetite. I'm going to be looking for that one.
So, well, it's a problem to find a publisher, isn't it?
It could be. That's all the old business, right? I'm kind of not much at business myself, so.
No. Well, it's very difficult to find. It's money. I haven't got the money to publish it myself, so it's. I shared it with you now. This is enough. I shared with a few people. But of course,
we'll share it. We'll share it. Somebody might know somebody, and maybe they'll pick up on it, and maybe we'll share your contact somehow. Find a way to put an email or something there.
Yes, it will come along. It's just that I have already written to one of the American literary agency, but they giving us all these awful warnings about them being, charlatans. and frauds and...
You know, like, okay, let's go back and just say, like, you've had so many experiences with death, and somehow it didn't give you nightmares. And you said it was because you're an author and because you write about it, and somehow it goes out. But yet you can't really, and we can't say that we're making a meaning out of death, because that's really very trite, right? And to just say, oh yeah, we can understand death, and we can understand death that arbitrary and unjust death. We can't really understand that, right?
No.
I mean, probably never, or we shouldn't even attempt it.
But whatever it is, I have been always very poor. Once my things are published and I see them in print, the same as that book, they're gone. They're like children outgrown me, and they're gone. They're finished. They belong to the world, and they can, they can dissect it, and they can hack it to pieces. They can destroy it. They can burn it. They can keep it alive. It doesn't matter anymore. If the book...
Well, everybody's going to do it different, Some
Yeah.
will put it on the shelf, and maybe it'll resurrect itself in 10 years. Some will hate it, some will love it, some will pass it on, and some will forget it.
Well, exactly. What it is, I think, from an author point of view, I always said, from a woman's point of view, it's like labor pain. You really work to bring it to life. It's in you, it grows in you, and then, wow, you've got a birth.
See, like, I don't have any experience like that, because
No.
I'm a self-publisher. I publish every day. And if I didn't have an outlet, I wouldn't be doing this, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Right? And I don't know what I would be doing. I couldn't even feature my life without being able to speak with you and with other people like you, and somehow just saying I do this thing, and people invite me in and say, well, I'll talk with you too.
That's right.
And if I wasn't doing that, then I would just have kind of a more isolated life, and I would just live with my own thoughts, and whether anything would pour out or not, I probably wouldn't pour out, because I believe there's so much discovery and dialogue. And it's harder for me to make a discovery by just meditating.
It is the, like you say, it is, I can live, when I do my writing, I don't mind isolation. I'm very isolated here. And as I said before, unless one really comes to see me, then, but otherwise I don't mind. I don't mind the isolation. I wouldn't mind. I sometimes think myself, I could live on an island, providing I have food. And, if you have got the company of so many thoughts, more than millions of thoughts, or you sort them out and you say you like a particular line of thought, and they are your company, you're so entertained. You're in such a world of entertainment that they keep you happy, they keep you smiling. They
perplex you, then they
perplex you.
They satisfy you for a while, then you say, well, what's the meaning of it, the whole thing?
Exactly. But then, of course, you realize that while you're a living person, and that comes through in the book, the most vital thing is we communicate. It's nourishment to us. It's nourishment to our spirit. It's nourishment to our soul. If we wouldn't communicate, we really would start starving. So whether we are communicating even through television, we still get outside, like you go to the shop and you buy food.
Outside energy
because
comes in, right? It's some kind of an energy. And,
yes.
Maybe I like it when it seems to go deep, and you already have a depth inside that you can access, and then other people maybe like it really shallow, and they say I don't want anyone interfering with what I do, but I can't imagine that to be satisfying for myself. I don't know.
Well, I find the only people who are shying away from going deep is when you are trying to penetrate into their own depth. They don't like it because you are unsettling something there, and they say, no, I don't want to think about this. No, that's true. I don't want, it confuses me.
Oh, yeah.
This is why I'm very cheerful. This is why I actually say playful in my mind. I say, well, look here. we don't have to discuss anything. If you don't want to be serious,
Right.
we just can have a game. From the other side, you have two sides to live, and I'm always pulled down into reality by circumstances. Money never works for me. Money really has something against me. I don't know.
Well, be more clear about what you mean by pulled down into reality. What's this reality?
I always lose money. That is reality. Because
well, you must have it to lose then, right?
Yes, I had it to lose, and every time I have it, then I'm losing it. Not because I'm...
So I'm not losing any because I don't have any to lose, right? So I just...
Yeah, but look at the estate. It went ever so well for 10 years. I was working on it. But then came the economic crisis in Germany. From 48 flats, which were the income to maintain them, to pay up the interest rates for the bank loan, because they still needed further doing, roofs and everything had to be done. I mean, a lot of flats for a little woman to manage. It's not an empire, of course not. Some people have thousands of flats. But for a single private owner, quite a bit. But in the end, there were only 17 flats rented. And all the rest were empty in the still.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh,
so we had, I was experienced the, there was a lot written about it, and it's still not quite cleared. The crash in East Germany of the expectations, how we would rise to the comfort and the, similar to the West. It started with unemployment. It started with pulling down. I mean, they just didn't just reunite Germany, East Germany. The major fault was done. They wanted to wipe out the communist system, clearing it out. But that meant they shut all the factories, most of the factories in the city. Okay, they were not efficient. They weren't up to the West German standard. But like the sugar factory, hundreds of people unemployed.
Wow. So in a way, it's kind of like something that the Western businessman was profiting by, and he was finding a bigger market that he could sell his sugar, and then said, okay, we're going to close you out because, okay, that was communism and we don't want to have that anymore. But if they could have had a compatible system and just let it move on and let it gradually graduate into a more privatized system, it could have been much more egalitarian.
It should have been. There have been, and they admitted there have been many mistakes been done. But I do not go into the political side because, again, the struggle of the political struggle was too dramatic, was too severe. Angela Merkel is trying to do a good business out of Germany, but Kohl didn't manage it. He didn't manage it. He tried to. See, they tried to put a lot of funds into the thing, and the Western people came, and they didn't understand the mentality of the Eastern people. I mean, it was a divided nation. It was like Korea, the divided nation. They didn't have their own. They had the same culture, but they still had a different everyday's mentality. They were people who used to go in the factory, didn't have any much work, but they still went to work. They still had their dignity. They weren't laid off. And so many things, but what concerns me, there was no more income. It just suddenly stopped. Whatever I did, and then of course I warned them too, there I was, stupid me, renovating, modernizing my city flats, and all around the Greenbelt came up these little wonderful estates with the beautiful little houses. And of course this is where my tenants flocked to.
Yeah.
Drained the city.
Yeah, I know, we did that too. We drained the cities in the U.S.
drains
You
the
know, I
city.
mean, we talked about so many things, I mean, you know, but mostly we talked about your earlier experiences of knowing death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing senseless killing also. And then I was even feeling back then to say, like, we could kill with coldness, you know, we don't have to kill with a gun or a knife.
No,
We
with
can kill with
coldness.
coldness, and we can kill with, you know, no concern over how others are, like just close their factory and just say, you know, let them starve, right? And then they can maybe line up for welfare or something like that. And then, I don't know, we kill in so many different ways, and somehow we lose, whether we're the killers or the killee. I believe we really lose, you know, and if we can make sense out of that, I mean, we can't really justify it in any way. So that if making sense out of death and making sense out of man's mistreatment of man
we
is
have
supposed
to
to,
work on that.
making sense of it is supposed to justify it. I guess I don't think we can justify it, and we don't need to really explain it away, you know. But yet we have to move on. But there's a great pain there. Somehow we can feel it and say, we can swear never again. I don't know if it'll never happen again, because it seems like it happens at every turn. Every possible thing, they'll say, oh, well, a lot of mistakes were made, you know. In other words, here we are doing a wonderful thing, reuniting Germany. And yet it was horrendous, I guess.
Because we are talking about layers of people mentalities and layers of intelligence. We know that it's a group game. There are certain groups, and if you are actually mixing, like politicians have to, social worker have to, and they are not necessarily, you're mixing with, you're going into, I always compare it with Kafka. There are so many castles, there's a big castle and there are so many rooms, but each one is a closed unit, and in each unit something is happening which is foreign to you. You're not a killer, you're not, but you go and have something to do in a different unit, or you want to go in there because you think you might sort out a few things. Then you see the killing and you ask the people, what are you doing? Why? And usually they just look at you with a blank face and say, don't know. Because I find if you ask a Russian, I mean, a great big horror Russian once picked me up and said, you German swine. And I thought I had it. It's not just being killed straight away, but it's being raped and, you know, then killed. So I thought I had it. And I just looked up at him with the eyes. I only was 16 or 17. And I just looked up with that eye, like saying, one thing, I wasn't scared. I just looked up in that eye and I thought, could you really do that to a little girl? And he suddenly dropped me and said, oh, run, you German swine. And I thought myself, I must have touched something. Now, when they are drunk, there was no way. Then I realized their mind and their thinking, their emotions and their feelings are blacked. And most of the killings are done when afterwards the person, I don't know why I did it. So really and truly, it's like a curtain drawn. It's much more what I'm against, or not against, what concerned me is from a child, as a child, how the orders from intelligent people who run a country can come, like exterminate the Jews. They were not drunk. They were normal, thinking, intelligent people who done degrees. They were running a country, and yet they can make decisions like exterminate the Jews. That means when I was about 8, and it was, no, 10, and it was compulsory to join the Hitler Youth. And we lived in a Jewish quarter. That's where all the villas were, because my father was very rich. And our friends were Jews from big big, shopping centers, big business people, doctors, lawyers. They were the cream of intelligence. And they were our friends. And they were my friends. And then suddenly they had this yellow star on, and I wasn't to say, "Hello, Uncle Ali." Don't talk to me. Why? And then I had to be they had to explain to me that actually you're not allowed to talk to Jewish people. No, don't ask any more questions, Father said. Don't ask any more questions. But as a child, you go around, and then you go to the Hitler Youth, and you suddenly say, you have to go to the station because we're driving out the Jews. And you stand there as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, and you see your friend being driven past you like a cattle. I still didn't have nightmares about it, but I did cry. And all I just said, and I got a diary too of that, written great big, "I hate Hitler." Of course, my father could have gone into the concentration camp. So he had to explain to me again, "You don't say that." But why? Why? Because I don't understand, Daddy. Well, there are hundreds and thousands of things, child, you don't understand. But there are hundreds and thousands of things you just have to be quiet about it. Now, this is something you grow up with, a feeling there's something drastically wrong in our system. There is drastically wrong something with the power which can be so dominant with death and killing. And yet, in a reverse way, Hitler did absolutely fantastic things for the youth. Taught us to be proud, not to lie, to be strong. I mean, there's such an insanity in a way that you say to yourself, there is a sickness. And when you feel there is a sickness somewhere, you can't be angry. You can be sorry. And it is the sickness I saw, and not anymore the badness. So, and not as an excuse. Sickness is not an excuse, but the question is, how can it be cured? Now, there's a lot of being done after the war because we are having, we haven't had another war like that, but they are still in Asia. These dictators are still around. And we always find that it is in the end a sickness. Now, how do we stop? We can't stop in many people cancer. We can't stop certain sicknesses, but we are working at it. We are working on it. And
so somehow we believe that that'll never happen again, and we believe,
yes.
no, I would never do that, and nobody would ever do that to me. But yet it's not true, because just in Bosnia, there was enormous killing. In Africa, there was the uprising where they killed millions, way worse than Hitler. Way worse, actually, and it just didn't hit our news because we didn't want to get involved, right? We didn't really say it.
Yeah.
And in Asia and Patpal and
Afghanistan and everywhere.
So many places, and it's happening all the time. It's happening today. And we could say, okay, well, now in our society we're killing with coldness, and we're killing with that we just don't care about people, and so we're just willing to let them if a bad lot falls to them. I mean, I think Australia has a safety net that's pretty decent, right? It's pretty.
It's quite good.
Comprehensive,
yeah.
But whether that is kind of sometimes bad, and I've heard Canadians also say that here everyone's laid back because they know that no matter what happens, there will be a check in the mail, even if they're out of work, and so then they don't really care about anything, and that they're not really forward going, and I'm losing the words, but I mean, they're not that self-reliant.
Well, I think Australia, being so cosmopolitan, because you have a lot of Europeans coming here, and you've got a lot of Asians coming now. You still got the prejudice in there, but that's another deep subject. There are so many subjects, but there are so many illnesses around, and I mean, we have got bacteria left, right, and center. We have viruses left, right, and center. We're getting colds, we're getting flus, we're getting chicken flus, we're getting God knows what. We're getting a lot of cancer, children cancer, animals have cancer. We are not safe. We are not safe from any attacks of diseases. Mm-hmm. Nature isn't.
We don't even know what that means, right? Because I mean, disease comes with
elimination
with some kind of a sadness. I mean, some kind of a sadness or an attitude makes us susceptible to perhaps pathogens that are already in our body and always have been, you know. But so far, we've been resistant to them. But somehow, an attitude of victimization or something like that will make us susceptible to these things, and whether they're really the cause or just the effect, do we know it?
Well, I think this is why I had that feeling, if I write the way I'm writing and make people aware that as we are writing story, we are also a picture book. And I always said it even when the children very early. I mean, this is a bit confusing. Before we had a lot of, remember I'm 82 nearly, and in my young days, if you would have told us about the television, we would have said, oh, you're crazy, aren't you? Sitting in the sitting room and watching a film. How is that possible? I mean, the wonder itself was a camera. The wonder itself, my father had a camera, and to see just that little camera, you know, I mean, that was a great thing. So what I felt then, we are in a developing stage of the communication system, which is also scientific, that we're saying we are in our technology is speeding ahead of us, that we have satellites now, that we can have Skype. It's speeding ahead of even our own. We have to adjust. They don't adjust it. The inventions don't adjust to us anymore. We have to adjust ourselves to our own inventions. Like the traffic system. Suddenly, from the horse cars, there were these cars. So we had to adjust ourselves suddenly to the invention of the car to get a system, traffic lights, traffic this, streets this, and busily working to accommodate what we have invented. Now we have to accommodate what we invent. Now, who is giving the inspiration for that invention? So again, another invention, and then suddenly we realize, oh my God, we have to change, we have to accommodate it.
Yeah, we have to make a new invention to solve the problems that the old invention created,
exactly.
Right?
And
because now there's too much traffic with cars, so now we have to have traffic lights, and now people are speeding and killing themselves, so we have to have speed cameras, right?
Big cameras, and so it goes on and on. So are we now becoming great thing? Are we becoming the serfs or the masters?
But anyhow, none of this stuff is really essential to life. Somewhere else we're looking for essential. We're trying to find out. And we're trying to live to the utmost, which means we have to somehow know death to the utmost. And I think, and that's what our subject seems to be, because of your wide and vast experience. And then we're looking at a mini death. The mini death is just how we mistreat each other. Mm-hmm. And so then, can that be improved? And you can't really force it, but somehow, can we inspire people? The religions and the scriptures, I mean, they've said the same things for so many years, but really it hasn't caught on, has it? I mean, is the world any better?
No, but we are still very busy. For instance, my grandson now is doing his PhD. He did his BA on aeronautic engineering, then he made his MA on ecology, and he's now doing his PhD on accident prevention. I looked at him and I said, hey, Peter, PhD on accident prevention? What? I said, you just be careful. I said, you write a PhD about being careful. He says, they call me Omi. Omi. No, there's far more behind it. There's a great research there, because they have to research every possible cause of an accident and then how to prevent.
Well, there's only one cause of an accident.
There-
Sleeping, right? It's sleeping at the switch.
That's right.
How
And-
can you get people to pay attention? And how you can do it is make something interesting. Let people do things that are interesting to them and not force them into a mold that's not interesting.
That's right, but it's also the technology. It's how to prevent another air crash, or how to prevent accidents. Where was it? What was the cause? It's not so much how prevent, but the cause of that particular. As an engineer, I mean, they have to find the causes. So it's also an insurance business. But compared when my first years spent in England were in Oxford, and that is what we call the the old classics, and how the science and how the studies for the young people already have changed in the technological age. We're going back from the books to study and analyze Shakespeare and Goethe and Schiller and all the people, and make a philosophical study. They are now, where there are most things, it's good to study philosophy, but you look at, you're an engineer studies too, you look at the need for an expansion of universities, for our young people to grow up to the knowledge of what we have invented. And it's the same with the children have been on the television. I remember when the first games came, and I thought, oh, easy, sit there and do it. My 6-year-old grandsons, and I was sitting there, they kept on saying, Omi, you're stupid. And I say, but this is stupid. What am I doing? And then I realized that coordination is so extreme, and how the children can do it so quick. Well, my brain just worked out how not to lose that ball. Well, they already found out how not to lose it. So the speed of thinking, coordinating with what they're doing, and the technological side is absolutely fantastic. So when you come into then the 80s, like I do, and keep up with technology as much as I can, with my computer, and then my first computer, and without instructions, and he kept on telling me, wrong. So, after about an hour patiently trying, I just screamed at it. I said, stop saying wrong. Accept me for once and all. Bang. And he says, all right. I say, how did I do that? And it was then finding the trick of life, I think, is not be frivolous and not to think it's just everything is a joke, but still have and don't lose what you call your child attitude. And that is, well, try, curious, logical.
It's all about discovery, right? A playful discovery.
Yeah. So all
that's
in all,
kind of like how to make life worth living.
Yeah.
Is have a playful discovery, and I think well, you seem to, and I believe my own life has proved that can even be more and more playful and more discovery every year, and not less.
And be grateful, I find, and show, and don't feel shy not to show your joy. I have met in Oxford, and I have met in Cambridge professors who would have thought in the end they were childish, but they were a delight, because there was no pride, well, there was ambition, But there was joy to say, this is beautiful. I understand it. And it's simple. It's simple. And if you can follow that kind of a line to say, and that comes from the Bible too, when you think you can take the greatest pleasure in a daisy on a meadow. It's so simple, it's so beautiful. And you suddenly realize it's so rich. Rather than, I like roses too, but I like daisies too. I like everything. And take this joy in not saying, well, I can't say it. I mean, I just what I am, and that's it. It is an unwise tongue that speaks of decaying ideas in the aged. It is a sad misconcept under the young of what age still can hold on rich and lively thoughts behind the folds of grey, weathered features. Age, where does it start? In the cradle? Yes, right there. You start to grow old, old, old. In looks, in manners, in attitudes, to what society has to give and has to say, anew from day to day. And that's it. You start to grow.
Margaret, I think we've found the key to youth, even in age.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, Margaret.
You're welcome.
Margarete Gorton. So, what a discovery in Australia and in the rest of the world where she's been. She left a long and deep wake. So, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, Richard. That was quite coincidental too. If it wouldn't have been coincidental, I would have somewhat premeditated my whole appearance. I would have tried to figure out what am I going to say, what am I going to do, and I hope I sound clever enough for what I'm doing. It wasn't.